Hello everyone and welcome to part 2 of scaling the Spectreman universe. I just want to say, while I record this, I'm a little sick, so I apologize, but the show must go on. If you aren't already caught up, make sure to go watch the last video, since in this video, we will be pulling stuff from that video in order to properly scale in this video. Without further ado, let's jump in. Today we'll be scaling Gokinosaurus, Nezubirdon, and finally Dustman. Let's scale some kaiju. Firstly, Gokinosaurus. Gokinosaurus is a giant cockroach. That's it. He's literally just a giant cockroach. In the show, he doesn't do much, but when you start to scale him, it gets out of hand fast. Firstly, the fact that he's just a giant cockroach is very important. According to holisticpetsolutions.com, cockroaches can handle up to 900 times their own weight on their back before they start to smush. And according to the Spectreman wiki, Gokinosaurus weighs 20,000 tons. So doing some simple math, you're able to find out that Gokinosaurus can at least handle 18 million tons on his back. Since it's on his back, it's technically his lifting strength. Meaning, for example, he could literally with no difficulty pick up flying form Space Godzilla with no issue. He was able to keep up with Spectreman, who can fly at Mach 8, and Spectreman at one point says his back is harder than steel. He was able to take one of Spectreman's attacks, and like we said in the last video, Spectreman just flying is able to bust through a mountain. So his attacks are far beyond those of a mountain level attack. He not only took it head on, but then he just walked it off with no visible damage. And after all of this, Dr. Gory goes ahead and upgrades him to make him stronger, more durable, and faster. Meaning he can now outperform all these previous feats in his new upgraded form. There's one problem though, we never get any outright statements of his destructive capabilities, so we have to entirely guess on this one. If you were to ask me, I'd say somewhere between country to maybe continental, but we can jump quite a few hurdles and get him to planetary. If you watched the last video, you may remember me saying that Zeron had steel-like skin, and as I mentioned, Spectreman himself says that Gokinosaurus has a back harder than steel. And again, this was pre-Dr. Gory amp. So since he's outclassing Zeron quite a bit, we can get him on par, if not higher than Zeron. Is this implying that anything harder than steel, take a building for example, is planetary? Anyways, at a low ball, you can get him to country. Mid ball, you can get him to continental. And high ball, you can get him from planetary to, screw it, maybe even large planetary. But that's really stretching things out. Next, we have Nezubirdon. Nezubirdon is a giant two-headed rat monster with wings. And he is very, very strong. Let's break him down. He has some of the best on-screen feats yet. Nezubirdon is the first kaiju in the show to inflict a very noticeable amount of damage upon Spectreman. Not only that, but after Spectreman cuts off both of his heads, he regrows them within a few seconds. Since he's the first kaiju to damage Spectreman, he would immediately upscale the current highest kaiju since they didn't damage him at all. The highest at the moment is Zeron. I'm aware I just said Gokinosaurus is large planetary, but that was at a high ball, unlike Zeron, who is without a doubt planetary. Meaning Nezubirdon is able to outscale him. He would comfortably be in large planetary range. Also, both times Spectreman fought Nezubirdon, he shows that he was more exhausted than ever. One time almost outright giving up. He's able to fly. Though there is no given speed, if I were to guess, he's on par with Spectreman, and like I already said, Spectreman can fly at Mach 8. His decapitated heads were still able to fight, and were even beating Spectreman for a hot sec. He was able to take the fire of 4 JASDF F4 Phantoms, and even slap 2 of them out of the air, which would put his reaction speed and movement speed higher than that of the traveling speed of a Phantom, which can get up to Mach 2.3. Meaning his reaction speed and movement speed is somewhere between Mach 2.4 to maybe even Mach 3. His statements include, Nezubirdon has precognition, which is also shown in the show when he knew exactly when and where Spectreman was going to attack him. He's able to regenerate his head with extreme speeds, and he's able to kill his enemies with a single bite, tail swipe, or nebula slice. So like we already said, Nezubirdon most likely scales to large planetary, and I think that's a fair rank. And now finally we have Dustman, which as silly as he looks, he's by far the most powerful one yet. Firstly, he was able to knock out Karas. For reference, Karas is much stronger than Ra. Ra is a gorilla that Dr. Gory turned into a servant and kaiju. Now let me try to explain real quick. When they're all three in their smaller forms, Dustman's stronger than Karas, and Karas is still stronger than Ra. Now this would of course carry over to their larger forms. For reference, when Ra was in his large form, he was able to move around and slightly lift a skyscraper, and according to the University of Houston, the average skyscraper weighs 350,000 tons. So since Ra was able to lift something that heavy, Dustman in his medium form could do this with no difficulty, and can probably lift upwards of 500,000 tons. Next are his in-show statements, which include, the creature has grown enormous, and he has absorbed enough energy through man's stupidity to exterminate an entire country, easily getting him to country level. Scratch that. Dr. Gory later says he's strong enough to destroy the world, not being able to get him to planetary. And we may be able to get him to our first star-level threat. The Overlords say to Spectreman, you may be too late to stop his extraordinary power from being used against the world. Firstly, reaffirming him being planetary, but this is the first time the Overlords outright believe that a kaiju is able to defeat Spectreman. They didn't even say that when Nezubirdon was attacking, meaning they see Dustman as more of a threat. meaning he could already be above Nezuberton, who, like we said, is already large planetary, meaning Dustman may be our first dwarf star, but we need a little bit more proof. Another point to back him up being dwarf star is the fact that Spectreman himself is large planetary as well, since he had beaten Nezuberton and everybody else so far. So Dustman would have to outscale Spectreman if the Overlords themselves don't think Spectreman can beat Dustman. And to add even more on, this is when he was at his medium height. And just from eating a few hundred pounds of trash, he more than doubled in size afterwards, and therefore power as well. And we know he grows in power when he grows in size, since from his human size to his building size, he went from barely a house level threat to a planetary level threat. It would only make sense that he would grow in power again when he more than doubles in size. And the jump from the human level to the building level size was already such an insane jump, we can now assume that this guy could be beyond star level now, but that's at a high ball. He was also able to react to Spectreman's flying speed, getting his reaction speed up to Mach 8. Not only that, but he moved his entire body in order to keep Spectreman in his field of vision, meaning his movement speed is also Mach 8. Not only that, but Spectreman at full speed drilled into Dustman, and it took him a while to get all the way through. And for reference, in the last video, I said Spectreman flew through Heteron. Now, firstly, it took longer for Spectreman to drill through Dustman than it did for him to fly through Heteron. And to add on, notice what I said. He had to actually drill through Dustman, unlike Heteron. He couldn't just fly through him, meaning his durability is much higher than that of a mountain. And given that we have already heard in the show, he's most likely large planetary levels of durability, which once again, as we said in the last video, durability equals attack potency. Now onto the statements. Dr. Gory says he can regrow his entire body from his hand. It's stated that his body length can go from 2 meters to infinite if he takes in enough garbage. Same deal with his weight. And that's all we have for Dustman. So where does he scale? At a low ball, you could get him to dwarf star. Mid ball, he's just regular star level. And high ball, large star to even possibly our first solar. I say possibly since we don't know the extent of his boost when he grew to his tallest height. So it's kind of iffy. I hope you all enjoyed. And I hope all the scalers watching aren't too upset with my rankings yet. Keep collecting, everybody. Guzzle the guy out. See ya.